am Nat.
And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta independence. And it was another big day for Alberta independence news. Yesterday was the court case. I would say today was even more crucial news coming out of the United States. There was a leak from the White House. Trump is expected to want to exit the USMCA tomorrow. So we're going to get into all that and a lot more today on Nat and the Guy.
But first of all, let me thank you so much for joining us today. Oh no, my thing is not working. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe because it really does help us out. Also, we try to read most, if not all, of your comments live as we go. I'm checking the audio. Yes, we do have audio live as we go. But super chats help us out a lot, and we pause the whole show for those and discuss those. And we have one right now, and I can't bring it up for some reason. And well, we also have memberships.
Well, that's okay. Why don't you just read the super chat off your phone there?
Hold on.
I can read it if you want.
I'm trying to fix it. Hold on.
Sorry, I rearranged this whole set again because there was a few issues with it. So hopefully it's going to work better today. We're going to find out.
Yes. Let me just try to reload them all again. But thank you so much to Ann Yasinski for the $10 super chat saying, hi, Nat and Guy. Hello. Says watching from Edmonton, Alberta.
Oh, fantastic.
And thank you so much. And thank you for watching us as well. Okay, we have more comments, so let me get into them. 1 second. Sanjali, hello, says hello. And Thomas Muse says, good afternoon, freedom people from the independence movement. Snowball keeps rolling and getting bigger, and hopefully so, and we will continue to try to make sure of that. And
yeah,
also...
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much damaging news coming out of Canada. Canada is headed in the absolute wrong direction with the headlines that came out today. Every single headline's helping Alberta independence in one way or another, it kind of looks like.
Yes, and also, hello. So, hold on. Silverfeet says, hi, go Mexico. Yes, go Mexico today against Ecuador at 7 p.m. if anybody is interested. I will be watching for sure. Sanjali says, watching from Lethbridge, and thank you so much. And Primors 007, haven't seen you in a while. Hello. Says, hola, Nat y Guy, hola, and thank you for being here. Says, gee, go away for a couple weeks and you change set, clothes, and sides. Is the world ending? Maybe.
Well, on this set, I have arranged it so... we don't switch sides on the TV because the way I arranged where she sits, where I sit, and where the monitors are. So we'll see how it goes.
But we did switch sides on the screen, I guess.
And
yeah. It does feel weird now that you mentioned it. But let me try to figure this out again and see if any other comments come in. Hopefully I'll be able to see them now. We'll see though. 1 second. Let me reload them all again. No, they're not showing up.
And I will say, as Nat's trying to fix the technical hiccups we are having, we have a ton of news in breaking news. So why don't we just get right into that if we can?
Yes, but please do keep sending comments because I do love to know what you all are thinking. So let us know as we go. But
so we won't be able to bring them up on the screen today?
Probably not. No.
Okay.
Because you closed the computer before we headed over here. But now let's go to breaking news. Let's start with breaking news. That's what I wanted to say.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Getting used to it all over again. 1 second. But let's start with the big news from Wealth Mood says, quote, breaking Reuters just now. The U.S. has declared its intent to exit the USMCA. A decade-long countdown for the pact starts today. And yes, indeed, it says U.S. declaration to exit USMCA to start a decade-long countdown for the pact.
Well, yeah, and it's not what the headline seems in any way, shape, or form. When I first seen the headline, I thought he was giving a 6-month notice to completely exit it. That's not necessarily the case. Also, this was a leak from the White House. It wasn't an official announcement like I initially thought. That being said, the official announcement is expected to possibly come sometime tomorrow, most likely. I will say they're trying to frame this in the softest way possible, of course, for Canada. And that you can go back to the article. So
I wanted to test it.
They're trying to frame this in the softest way possible for Canada, saying it's a decade-long countdown. Not necessarily. It could be anywhere from 6 months to 10 years. If it goes to that 10-year countdown, it's going to be a year-on-year review. This is going to make absolute inconfidence in any Canadian market. You will slowly see manufacturing as well as a lot of other sectors move their headquarters and base of operations from Canada to the United States because there is not a renewal. I fully expect him to possibly fully pull out of this thing. The more I research and the more I learn about it, I think he's always wanted to get out of this. I think he views this as a global trade pact in order to keep the United States trapped and to allow other countries to use them. Mexico as well has been working on their trade deal phenomenally hard for the last year. They're in their third round of actual negotiations. Canada hasn't even begun their official talks yet.
Yes. Now can I move away from it?
Yeah.
Okay, because I realize if I go to where it says me, it's you, and if I go to you, it says me. So I have to get used to that now again as well.
I need to reprogram the buttons, probably.
Yes. But now let's move on to Melissa says, quote, one day, and Canada still hasn't started formal conversations with the United States about the USMCA. Mexico has. What about those entire committees that Carney set up for U.S. trade? Have they been working or no? No, is probably the answer. Let's see if this audio works.
But it's also important to note that Canada has not officially started formal negotiations with the United States on the CUSMA agreement, something that the Mexicans have already done with the Americans. They've had 2 rounds of formal negotiations, whereas Canada and the U.S. so far have only had informal discussions. So tomorrow was not a cliff, but it's also important to note that Canada has not officially started formal negotiations.
Yeah, and you can leave it there. And I will say this, Mexico has had to jump through more hoops than any other country. We fled Canada and now live in Mexico, so we pay pretty close attention to what Mexico has had to do. They have had to militarily, economically, and in a lot of other senses, completely reorient a lot of big mechanisms in their society. They're now pushing Chinese manufacturing out of the country, especially car manufacturing. Militarily, they're really cutting down on organized crime, allowing the U.S. in to run black operations in coordination with the Mexican military. The fact that Canada hasn't even started their official negotiations, they haven't had to jump through any hoops yet. I really think Mark Carney may be trying to sabotage this deal intentionally. The problem is there's nobody on the other side.
Yes. Oh, your border doesn't work. Also, I have to reprogram that as well. I'll just keep it here as a reminder to myself when I'm doing the timestamps to when I rewatch this bit. But now let's go to Ryan Gertison. Says, quote, China said on Tuesday it will impose a 73.5% preliminary tariff on imports of Canadian pea starch from July 1st as part of the temporary anti-dumping measures after a more than 10-month investigation. The Ministry of Commerce said its investigation had found that Canadian pea starch was being dumped, quote unquote, in China, causing material injury to the domestic industry. So all of those elbows up, oh, we're going to go trade with China now. Well, now China's starting to impose big tariffs as well on Canada. So how's that working out, Carney?
Well, China knows Canada is in a very delicate situation right now, especially if Trump announces he wants to exit the USMCA. He's going to go into hard-nosed negotiations. I think Carney was thinking he was going to play China off of the U.S. It looks like the U.S. and China are playing ball together to put really Canada in the tight situation, and they're both going to squeeze every ounce of juice they can out of China, and that's going to be natural resources and a lot of other elements such as water and any manufacturing that is in Canada. I fully expect to start clearing out to the United States and Mexico over the next 6 to 12 months, and once it clears out, it's not going to be coming back.
And again, apparently when you bet fully against your own country and its traditional allies, well, it results in this, in you losing on both sides, or you end up like the dog with 2 sandwiches, as we say here in Mexico.
Well, and I'll also say one other thing. Mark Carney keeps saying he wants to negotiate from a place of strength. This sounds a lot like Europe and Ukraine with the war. They just keep trying to press, and they can't get a position of strength, so they become weaker and weaker and weaker. The problem with this is everybody knows the clock's on now. 6 months until the U.S. can fully exit that trade deal if they want, or they can use the carrot and the stick approach going year to year. Carney loses more leverage every single day as soon as that announcement is called by Trump that he wants to exit the USMCA. China knows it, and every other country knows it as well. One other thing, all these MOUs Mark Carney went around the world signing, they were all hinged on one thing, a renewal of the USMCA. These countries want to avoid American tariffs through Canada or through Mexico. That's why they signed the MOUs, and if Carney can't secure a deal, he's not going to secure any of those MOUs into the final phase either.
But now let's go see what PP also has to say, that being Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre says, quote, Breaking. Economists downgrade growth to the worst in a decade outside of COVID. That makes Carney's growth record worse than Trudeau's. Let that sink in. He's delivered only recession and the worst food inflation among G7 countries. Again, the only country in the G7 currently in an actual recession. You can't grow an economy with bailouts, handouts, and carve-outs for the liberal club unless you're trying to build a communist and or socialist economy. We grow it through low taxes, affordable prices, and opportunity for all. But I would also ask Mr. PP, Pierre Poilievre, when do you plan to do that? Because at this point, you have literally almost no power, if not any at all.
Well, it's going to be interesting what happens. They could use a bait and switch move here where eventually Carney will step down, but he will build the mechanisms. And then the good old Uniparty will come in there and actually finalize the nationalization of Canada. I think the nationalization is coming no matter who is in power, whether it's the Conservatives or the Liberals. That's why I think it's an important time for Alberta to get out now while they still can. All this economic devastation that's coming towards Canada, mainly from the United States playing hardball now, and Canada losing a lot of their trade leverage, is going to ultimately help Alberta independence in big ways. And it's all because of Carney's mistakes and blunders.
Yes, but next, also, again, on top of all of that, J. Gen Xer says, quote, Carney keeps immigration under control.
Oh, was there one more article or no?
I think one after this, yes.
Yeah, let's go to that one first, and then this one is supposed to be next.
Okay.
I might have misarranged them.
Yes,
there.
it was misarranged. WWG1WGA says, holy S, the Canadian federal government decided to flush out their local talent and just announced new express entry for immigrant categories of quote-unquote skilled military recruits into the Canadian Armed Forces. And we have been talking about this, and when Lena Diab or whatever her name is, announced this initially a few weeks ago, I believe, almost a few months now, but still continues to be completely insane.
Oh no, there's more announcements. This is a fresh announcement coming off of literally today. So let's take a listen to this. And it's more than just soldiers that she's opening this up to.
We're also adding categories for candidates with work experience in transport occupations, including pilots, aircraft mechanics, and inspectors. We've identified these sectors as areas in critical need. Strengthening those helps us move goods across the country and to new markets, supporting trade, supply chains, and economic resilience. And finally, we are creating a new category for skilled military recruits to attract highly skilled foreign military applicants. Eligible recruits with a job offer from the Canadian Armed Forces, including doctors, nurses, pilots, can be invited to apply for permanent residence. They will be subject to the same security and all military requirements. This new category will support our government's commitment to strengthen our armed forces, to defend our sovereignty, and to keep Canadians safe.
And it sounds like almost exactly the opposite. They're inviting highly skilled career soldiers from other militaries. I'm expecting the Chinese military, the Indian military, because that's where the majority of immigrants come from. This is inviting spies right into your inner circle. This is not going to be good in any way, shape, or form. The United States is not going to want to do business with the U.S. military or intelligence agencies if this is going to be their policy going forward.
But I am glad that they continue to keep their finger on that specific point of the military, but also the opening of the express entry path towards Canadian citizenship, because again, that announcement was from a few months ago, but I'm glad it's still circulating out there. But next, J. Gen Xer says, quote, Carney keeping immigration under control in Canada. And that is because Mark Carney handed out 408,000 student visas in 2026.
And it's not just about the student visas. It's about the soldiers. It's about trying to get skilled workers into the country, and rather than training your own citizens in a free and independent Alberta, I'm hoping to put Albertans first, not make citizens second-class citizens in their own country. A lot of countries are waking up to this. Canada is not one of them.
But now let's go into your comments and then into Alberta Stay Free. Stephen Jensen, starting with saying, thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying, I wonder how many Chinese military will be coming or are already here, because I would say there has been already some in, but not officially in the official manner that they're bringing them in now. Hold on. Stephen Jensen also says, can't stay long, going to Jason Levine's Constitution workshop in Red Deer tonight. And we've been watching them. You've been watching them online as well. Says, hold on one second. Whistle Stop is coming along. Lots of campers and vendors already. Bring lawn chairs and maybe umbrellas too.
Oh, absolutely. And I will say, Jason Levine and these constitutional proposals and going into them and having each of them pitch. He had another live stream last night. I was absolutely enthralled with that. That was the second or third time he's gathered that group together. It is absolutely fantastic. And it really gets people's gears turning of what the possibilities could be in a new and free Alberta.
But also, thank you so much, Stephen Jensen, for the $20 super chat. And it is the same message you just sent, but I'll read it again. It says, can't stay long. And that's okay. It says, going to Jason Levine's Constitution workshop in Red Deer tonight. And if any of all of you that are also here have that opportunity to attend one of those, I would say it is very interesting. Whistle Stop is coming along. Lots of campers and vendors already. Bring lawn chairs and maybe umbrellas too for tomorrow, I believe, July 1st.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark Carney is coming to Edmonton tomorrow, Calgary tomorrow, I believe. So we're going to have our eyes out for that. Hopefully the Alberta flags are out to greet him.
Give him a welcome, I will say. Stephen Jensen also says, Corey Morgan and I are bringing lots of lawn signs. I will also have Jason Levine's signs to hand out too. And that is great as well. And thank you to Stephen Jensen too for all the work that you've been doing personally with handing out signs and also continuing to let us know about events too.
Yeah, and if you get a chance to talk to Jason Levine, talk to him about the Forever Canada lawn signs, because it looks like they may have ordered between $7,000 and $10,000, yet they haven't claimed any actual funds coming in. So there could be some crooked dealings going on there. Jason Levine exposed that today on his X account. I didn't have a chance to pull it, but I think we're going to talk about it a little bit tomorrow.
But also, Stephen Jensen, again, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. And it's because you wrote the same thing I just read out. But it's great that Corey Morgan will be bringing lots of lawn signs and Jason Levine as well. And Sanjali says, I have 24 signs from Corey. If anyone living in Lethbridge wants one, let me know. So let Sanjali know if you live in Lethbridge has signs from Corey Morgan too. And Primors 007 says, nasty rain and lightning storm in Calgary at the moment. Well, very similar to here. Here it happens every day, right when we start our show, essentially. And when we end it, it stops raining.
Well, and I had no idea. I mean, we've been together for years, and I had no idea that you were so scared of lightning and thunder.
Here I am, because it's really loud and it reverberates a lot.
Well, you kept shutting the curtains, and then you would put your earphones. And then one night, you just told me, like, "Oh, I'm freaked out because the lightning and thunder don't go outside."
I usually am not, but because of where we are, we're in a very thunderous zone, and we're in the middle, at the bottom, essentially, of a small valley close to Mexico City. So it kind of reverberates all over the place. And also, I don't like being able to see it and then hearing it right away because I know it's going to be really close.
Well, and we get thunder and lightning almost every single day, I would say, like clockwork. Like
it's something. It happens in summer in Mexico and close to Mexico City. Philip Vespa says, the media dismissed the stay as a quote-unquote partial victory. No, we achieved a total and complete victory, says Philip. Our signatures will be counted and our question the way we wanted will be answered.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I was watching Mitch Sylvester today. Oh God, who was interviewing him today? I can't remember, but I was watching Mitch Sylvester anyway, and it seems like everybody is kind of in agreement. The question won't be able to be a binding question for October 19th. We're stuck with what we got, but at least the signatures are being counted, and it gives us two different looks for that binding referendum, whether we want to go the citizens' path or whether we want to have the premier actually called the question. We will have to talk to some people to see which path would be best to go first. And in case they block one path, we can always try to submit it in the other path. So it's almost like we have two bullets in the gun now.
Also, Terry Labiash, hello, and thank you for being here. Philip Vespa says, if PP is a dog, he would be a Chihuahua, not a pit bull. Also looks like one, apparently. So Rafid also says, I watched the movie The Shot. It was heartbreaking, and yes, it is, and it's insane that more and more people don't want to remember and want to intentionally forget about what happened during the Jibby Jab era. And I know, unfortunately, Silverfeet was affected personally, so still thinking about that insanity too.
Yeah, and I believe Jason Levine was the one that made that movie The Shot. It was absolutely fantastic.
But now let's go to, and Robinson says John Bolton.
Oh, yeah. It was John Bolton that
okay.
interviewed Mitch Sylvester. Now it just slipped my mind for a second there. Absolutely fantastic interview. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. I will say Mitch Sylvester is looking in fantastic health right now.
But now, speaking of, let's go to Alberta Stay Free.
Free home.
Let's start with, nope, click the wrong one. The Canadian Shield says, quote, "It's so obvious why Albertans are fed up."
Yeah,
So
and
that's
Albertans have been fed up for quite a while. We'll see what he has to say here for a sec.
Hey, hold on. I'm stuck. There we go.
Hello, everybody. Sterling here, walking and talking. Beautiful St. Lawrence River behind me. I got to thinking about Mark Carney's government, of course, and the other day he made a lot of negative comments. He basically told the people of Alberta they weren't bright enough to understand the ramifications of separation.
It's a dangerous bluff. What gets sold in these referenda, that everything's going to be easy, that you can keep your passport, you can keep the currency, you can stay in the country and leave it at the same time. You get all the benefits, but another thing.
On the tail end of telling
And nobody thinks it's going to be easy at all. And we actually have a video coming out very soon, hopefully before the end of the week, about the passport. So
the same press conference that he just gave another $10 billion to Quebec's infrastructure.
In Quebec, we have just agreed a few weeks ago, Premier Frechette and myself, a $10 billion infrastructure package.
So that's $10 billion. There's the train, that disgusting high-speed rail train that they want to put in. Now there's a mine that they're expanding.
And I will say one other thing. He's giving Quebec massive amounts of money. And when he was asked about this, he said, oh, well, I'm giving Alberta massive amounts of money as well. Billions of dollars we've invested in the green infrastructure to transition them out of oil and natural gas. Alberta doesn't want that. At this point, we want freedom. And if there is any investment coming in, and we want it from the private industry, not the government. And we want them investing in oil, natural gas, mining, the natural resource sector.
And they're expanding the Port of Montreal. The Port of Montreal, of course, is not a very busy port because it is tucked at the base of the St. Lawrence, essentially, and not very much overseas freight comes to it. I'm not 100% sure why we need that expansion. Maybe they feel that they can put a pipeline in there or something. I just wanted to show how when Alberta says we've had enough and we don't like what you're doing and the way you're treating us, it's all about how, well, you're not bright enough to understand it. And when Quebec says we may elect a government that is going to be pushing for separation, the Liberals throw at least 3 infrastructure projects at them in light speed and give them a $10 billion check. What kind of country is that? What kind of government is that? And when you consider it in that respect, how can you wonder why the people in Alberta are fed up? I know the CBC is trying to drum up some of their friends in the inner city of Calgary, but the province of Alberta is quite large, and people are fed up with the mistreatment. No matter what the Liberal government tries to scare you with, the way that the contrast between the way they throw money at British Columbia, throw money at Quebec, and then tell Alberta that they are the ones that have to pay for it and they have to do it on a shoestring because they're not going to develop any of their natural resources. I can understand why people in Alberta are fed up. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments.
And that's kind of what everybody in Alberta has been saying, but not a lot of people have been paying attention to Quebec and how much he's actually throwing at Quebec. And we see a lot of Liberal cabinet ministers and other politicians either step down or rearrange themselves to start running in different Quebec ridings. And we see the polling slightly shifting. I think they want to really try to push to make sure the Separatist Party, the PQ, does not get into power within Quebec right now. I think their strategy is working there. He's taking exactly the opposite strategy with Alberta. He's using fear. He's using elbows up. He's using the exact same strategy he had for the Orange Man in the last election and Pierre Poilievre.
But I would also say, and I would also ask, is it because he doesn't think we're actually going to do it? And have we not made it enough clear enough that we are actually going to do it and that there are mechanisms outside of just waiting for the federal government to eventually grant us the ability to maybe ask a question if some people want to leave, that we're going to leave?
Yeah, we need to wake up. After this big court win that we had yesterday, we need to make sure this thing doesn't get extended to 2.5 or 3.5 years after October 19th, 6 to 12 months. It looks like October 17th would be the most likely for the binding referendum if we can win, once we win this first one. And if that is the case, we need to make it sure it is very clear there should be no other questions on that referendum. It needs to meet the Clarity Act and it needs to meet it very, very easily, meaning no other questions on that ballot except for independence.
And it really does seem that he there was trying to call Alberta's bluff, not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be interesting. What does he say when he comes to Alberta tomorrow? Oh, yeah, I had some interesting news. I forgot I was watching Carney earlier. He says he's coming to Alberta tomorrow. It looks like sometime just before October, they're going to have an announcement to make with what this MOU or some contracts that are going to be going out. So just how that he knows the Quebec election is coming up and he's throwing contracts at them, I think he thinks he's going to do the same thing, but just before the referendum, so it's fresh in everybody's mind. But we need to really look at what is in the details of those contracts, because I believe he's going to try to work with Danielle Smith to take the sovereignty away from Alberta and federalize natural resources in all of Western Canada.
But next, Alberta Proud Dad says, quote, last week, First Nation chiefs and Premier Danielle Smith exchanged jabs. Today, we have her on the show. Make sure you follow his YouTube for the full interview.
Last week, First Nations chiefs and the Premier took shots at one another. And today, I have Premier Danielle Smith on the show. You're going to be able to watch it on my YouTube channel at 6 p.m. Alberta time tonight, so make sure you're subscribed.
And I wrote a message on X, so hopefully it was retweeted and he might have seen it. I think everybody knows the game Danielle Smith ran on the Unacceptable Fringe when she went on there. When you're typically doing interviews, you lead in with softer questions and you move up to the harder and harder questions more near the end of the interview. You don't start off with the hardball questions. It's just... you need to get your groove and things like that. With Danielle Smith, she likes to take long answers and try to burn up the time with the easy questions. So you have to really start with literally the hardest questions first, the most uncomfortable questions first. And it's usually the opposite way that you would run an interview. But unless you want Danielle Smith to run a game on you, that's exactly how you have to conduct that interview. And if you conduct it like that, you're very likely to burn the bridge, but at least you're going to get to ask the actual questions that matter.
Because she has shown to be unreliable.
Absolutely. I
was
I was extremely upset with the way that she conducted herself within that Unacceptable Fringe interview. She conducted herself like Kamala Harris, playing what's wrong?
There's a spider.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, let's continue to go.
But next, Let Alberta Decide says, quote, Canada's youth under 25 now rank 71st in the world for happiness, worse than youth in countries like Mexico, Brazil, Vietnam, Serbia, Kazakhstan, and China. This is not normal. This is national decline. Alberta's next generation deserves better. Alberta's done waiting. And I'm glad that Let Alberta Decide continues to bring information and simple graphs that people can easily see and say, well, in 2015 we were 5th and now we're 71st. And I wonder why. And I think a lot of people, and especially the young people, have gotten complacent enough and comfortable enough where they think, and they've kind of forgotten that the outside world exists and that the circumstances in the outside world are very different to what's happening currently in Canada. They're just not allowed to see it by both their media that propagandizes to them, by their parents and the adults that have put them in this situation, in the schools, etc., and also by themselves and their friends and their circle of friends too.
Well, and I will say this is only the beginning. The time clock starts tomorrow if Trump makes that announcement wanting to exit the USMCA. That puts you on potentially a 6-month timeline for absolute devastation there, and 71st for unhappiness. How about number 1 for economic devastation? Because that's where Canada will be headed if they can't sign that USMCA deal. And the thing is, he keeps saying he wanted to negotiate from strength. He is in a permanent place of weakness when he goes into these negotiations now.
And it says at the bottom, Independent Alberta, we owe the next generation a better system. But I would also say if you're young and you can vote, or you know someone young that can vote and that could vote on this upcoming non-binding referendum and then push it forward towards binding or just leaving, essentially, I would say push them to them and explain that it is for their own benefit and they owe themselves the opportunity to actually take it. The rest of the provinces currently don't have this opportunity, and the rest of the young people in these provinces don't have the opportunity. You do, so take it.
And this will be the biggest deciding factor for pushing people over to Alberta independence. We're still stuck right around 30%, at least according to the polling. But if that USMCA continues to trend in the direction it is, it's going to send moderates over. Hell, if it gets really bad and it's a full pullout from the United States, meaning absolutely no deal, we'll cherry pick deal for deal, industry for industry, that will even start to push economic liberals over because they will understand the economic devastation that Canada will be in. And the only way out at that point will be independence for Alberta.
And lastly, from Keith Wilson says, quote, the question Albertans should ask is simple. Are we gaining a pipeline or are we being asked to accept permanent net zero costs on our entire energy economy in exchange for a political promise? Because those are two very different things.
Well, and this is extremely important, kind of what he just said. And this is what we need to keep reminding people. We need to look at the deals, look at the MOUs, because he's definitely going to throw a pile of contracts just before the October 19th referendum. But what is actually in those deals? There's going to be all kinds of strings attached, and we're going to be selling out the future of Alberta for some short-term MOU or contract.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you could read the headline there, actually.
Oh, sorry. It says, Alberta has outgrown the excuses. Alberta is done waiting.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But now I'll actually go read your comments, and then we'll go into Alberta politics. Stephen Jensen says, just because Brexit didn't have a plan doesn't mean we don't. Carney and Laurentians looking down at Alberta yet again.
Well, and here's the thing. They didn't expect Brexit to go through. They went from one globalist government to another globalist government. This is a completely different situation with Alberta. We're already just starting to discuss new constitutions. What do we want when we do press that reset button? We voted conservative for the last 93 years. This is a track record that a real foundation can be built on. So when we transfer away from the Canadian federal government, it is going to be something completely new, completely different. We're going to want to make sure we don't make the same mistakes that the Canadian government, the UK government, and the EU government have all made, including the Australians. Globalism has absolutely destroyed the West at this point.
Mm-hmm. And Stephen Jensen says it's a race for the control of Alberta, the people, or the New World Order. NW. Exactly. And I mean, who do you want it to win, especially if you have to continue to live in Alberta?
Yeah.
And you're able to make that choice and that decision and push for that for now.
Well, and here's the thing, and I was really thinking about this earlier, and it's like, I think Trump is going to fully pull out of this deal. And I don't know if he'll fully pull out right away. I think he would want to wait to after the midterms. But it's very obvious at this point, Mark Carney and Canada are now the transition plan for globalism. They wanted the resources from Russia. It looks like that may not work, or it's not going to work immediately. And their secondary plan is Canadian federalization of natural resources, and to funnel a lot of that money into the EU and step closer and closer and closer to the EU. If I can see it, I know Trump can see it, and Trump has been pushing back hard against globalism. He's going to want to break Mark Carney in Canada in order to make sure once his term is done, these globalists aren't going to rise from the grave again.
And Justin GP, hello. I got your email. I have to respond. You know how terrible I am at responding, but thank you. And says, hiya, folks. Nice set. Thank you. It's the same one we were testing out, except now he moved everything around as he usually does.
Yeah, there was a few problems with a few little things, and I literally rewired, removed everything, and then I'll continue to make small improvements, but it looks like everything is really working well today. Sure. We both have our own desk now, so if we want to film individual videos as well, it's like a different set. So,
Teresa Freedom says Danielle was on the Levine show today. Jason asked, such good questions, and Danielle still gave most answers in word salad.
I don't know how I missed that. I'm going to absolutely have to watch that. Not after this because we got a conference call, but later tonight, I guess.
Yes. And I have the game to watch. But thank you for letting us know. And yeah, I mean, as expected, I would say.
And again, I haven't seen the interview. Jason Levine is one of my favorite content creators within Alberta Independence, as well as John Bolton. That being said, Jason Levine is really nice. And at this point, it's obvious what Danielle Smith's game plan is when she goes into these interviews. She knows it's going to start with softball questions. She's going to want to burn up the time with those softball questions. Somebody needs to go in there and just be the bad guy and ask the real tough questions with no remorse right off the bat.
True. But now let's go to Alberta Politics.
Yeah, Alberta Politics.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
Oh no. Oh, you can say I can try out my button and see if my button works. Oh, that's better, actually. I told him I'm too bright, and because he's a producer and his producer mind, he has to change it instantly. Can't wait. But might as well do it now.
Okay.
Now I'll check how it looks. Let us know also what you think.
But
now let's start with, where are we? Let's start with Mark Carney, who says, quote, when we control our own energy, we control our future. He wants to control the energy, he wants to control the resources, and he wants them all for himself. In my opinion.
We face an energy crisis on 3 levels: an affordability crisis, a security crisis, and a climate crisis. The good
You gigantic retard, whose fault is that?
news is that Canada has the solutions, and that when we control our own energy, we control our future.
Okay, right there. Actually, let's just replay it so everybody can really hear this, because it's obvious where he's going. On tomorrow's show, I grabbed a lot more statements that are reinforcing what he's saying right here in longer speeches as well.
We face an energy crisis on 3 levels: an affordability crisis, a security crisis, and a climate crisis. The good news is that Canada has the solutions, and that when we control our own energy, we control our future.
Okay, right there. When he says Canada has the solutions when we control the energy, what he's meaning is when the Federalists control the energy on a federal level. He's getting ready for full-on federalization of natural resources. Now, will he try to do it before this October 19th vote? I think he's already kind of built the mechanisms. I think he's going to try to pitch this federalization as a good thing for Alberta, and it is absolutely not. It's not good for anybody except for the federal government, the EU, and the globalists, because ultimately that's where he's going to want to move this money from.
And for a lot of a lot of people call, for example, pointing this out or saying, oh, maybe he probably wants to federalize natural resources and from there move on because of all the things he's showing and saying that he wants to do. But a lot of people will continue to say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. They literally tell you, and there's multiple times this has happened during the COVID jibby jab era. They told us what they were doing. They had a whole test that they ran on what would happen if, and Bill Gates also came out to say it. So in this case, I would say he's literally telling us what he plans to do.
Well, and he's also readjusting his climate standards and things like that. He's literally saying, for the sake of the future of Canada, we're going to have to move towards natural resources. But when he's talking about this, he's already built the mechanisms for federalization. Now we're going to actually start to see that movement. And he's going to work with Danielle Smith to do this. He's going to use Danielle Smith to pitch this as a good thing to Albertans to vote against independence. And ultimately, she is signing away the sovereignty of Albertans with every single MOU.
But next, Ryan Gertison says, quote, CBC once again making sure Canadians' elbows stay up. There is no reason for these... Oh, hold on. 1 second before I even continue reading. Thank you so much, Ann Yasinski. Now I can bring it up for the $2 super chat, and says Carney means when he controls, we are controlled. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And
we are controls. Yes.
And what we have to realize is he's already cut off private investment from coming into Canada for these natural resource projects. So now he wants to federalize all the natural resources. He's going to make the federal government the investor in all these projects, maybe even the EU the investor of these projects. And what is he going to do? They're going to want to cut costs. How are they going to cut costs? They're going to bring cheap migrant labor in to run these mines, to run these oil fields, and to run a lot of other things. The citizens of the provinces will no longer benefit from this. And what kept a lot of these cheap foreign workers out, I used to work in the mining industry, were the unions and things like that. The federal government can completely change a lot of the legislation because they're going to be the ones investing in these projects.
But thank you so much for the $2 super chat. And next, as I was saying, hold on. So Ryan Gertison says, quote, CBC once again making sure Canadians' elbows stay up. There's no other reason for these segments other than to keep people distracted from our own government's failings and use Trump's tariffs as a main scapegoat for our country's continued decline.
Well, they know the announcement's most likely coming tomorrow that the United States wants to exit the USMCA. If they make that official announcement tomorrow, they want to make sure all Canadians are going to stay voting for the Liberal Party. How do you do that? You run the exact same campaign they did last time. Keep your elbows up, Liberals. Orange man bad. Absolutely ridiculous. Alberta wants to forge a new relationship with the United States. We should lean into that, especially if the United States announces tomorrow that they want to pull out of the USMCA with Canada. Alberta and Alberta independents should announce that we want to forge a new relationship, a tariff-free relationship with the United States.
I would love to see Canada be the 51st state. Customer Dale Darling is on the hunt to buy local. When she first heard Trump's comments, she had a visceral reaction.
I don't understand why anyone would think that any nation would react well to basically talk of colonization. It is hard to look in a neutral way at what's going on outside our borders. And I simply had such a negative reaction to it. I wasn't prepared to support their economy.
She stopped buying American.
People don't stop and think why they believe this and who told them this. So what kind of research has she done into the actual impact or what it means or what the media has been telling her versus what the other side is telling her, because the other side cannot speak.
Products, and says many of her friends have done the same. Several Nova Scotia retailers say they continue to see a lot of interest in buying local. At Westside Beer, Wine, Spirits in Clayton Park, while bourbon is popular, there's less demand for other American products.
And so for the most part, Canadians, I think we have really spoken with their wallets, saying that they still want to support Canadian and local, and that the U.S. products are not things that they are super keen on buying in great demand.
And at the NSLC, sales of Nova Scotian alcohol products increased more than 11% in the most recent fiscal year. This happened at the same time that overall alcohol sales fell. In a statement, NSLC spokesperson Tara McKinnon said that most of the remaining U.S. inventory is wine and spirits, and, quote, given the volume of U.S. wine on hand, it will take some time to sell through it. At a local source market in Halifax, Trump Talk drove new customers to the store, and they continue to shop there. Founder Sean Gallagher believes the interest in buying local took root at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We can just support each other. And
okay, and you can kind of leave it there. And this whole idea of buying local is absolutely fantastic, but Canada has arranged a lot of Canadian companies to be in monopolies, and they're extremely high priced. Opening tariff-free trade with the United States would mean extremely cheap foods. That would be the death of the monopolies, that we would have to restructure our own farming as well as other sectors, but it would also give price variation on the shelf, meaning we would have cheap options, mid options, and expensive options. All Canada has right now is extremely expensive options, and a lot of people can't afford that. They're literally missing meals. They've cut down from 3 meals to 2 meals. I know a lot of people are only eating 1 meal in Canada because they write us about it, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Canada's supposed to be a first world country, but their citizens are being treated like third world citizens by their own government.
Mm-hmm. Next, and speaking of Marcella says, quote, someone in the Prime Minister's office told a friendly pollster their plan for 24 Sussex 7 weeks before the announcement. The pollster tested it. The pollster's results gave the green light. Carney then announced the donation scheme as if it were a fresh idea based on humility. The Prime Minister now refuses to tell Canadians who in cabinet ran the play to conduct the AB market tests on their plan, and now he wants you to build it with your after-tax dollars, all because of a survey result.
And this has less to do with the Sussex remodel. We've kind of covered that story a lot. We'll continue to cover it. This has a lot to do, you can go back up to the top, with this AB testing and running a country off of polls. Justin Trudeau was the first one to do this. He ran polls on a weekly basis, paid tens of thousands of dollars on a weekly basis to do this, and he would change his messaging based on those polls to get the public around to him before he would make announcements. Pierre Poilievre does this a lot as well, and it's a damn shame. I like what a lot of Pierre Poilievre's first principles are. The problem is he'll never be the first one to actually say something from a stance of a first principle. He'll wait till it's acceptable with the polls as well. Mark Carney does the same thing. It's like all politicians in Canada do this. I mean, there are a few exceptions like Dallas Brody and a few other people, but for the most part, this is how Canadian politics are played now. A lot of U.S. politics are being played the same way. Trump kind of changed that game a little bit in the United States, I would say, though.
True. But thank you so much to, where are we? And Yasinski again for the $5 super chat saying, with Alberta part of Canada at this point, would Alberta be able to negotiate with the USA now or not until we are our own country?
Yeah, and this is kind of what I was saying. If Trump completely pulls out of the deal, all he wants is what Alberta and Western Canada has. And ideologically, from the Western provinces, BC isn't even going to play ball. Alberta and Saskatchewan would. It would be nice if Trump went to Alberta individually and tried to cut a deal there. The problem with that is I think Mark Carney is realizing that might be a little bit of a hole, and that's why he's going to start with these MOUs and the federalization of Western Canada and natural resources within Canada. He wants to make sure that he has absolute control over everything. This is one of the big reasons Alberta needs its independence, because we don't have a problem with Donald Trump. We don't have a problem with the United States. As a matter of fact, we have a good relationship with them. Ever since the founding of Alberta, a lot of people that came to Alberta were from Texas and were from Oklahoma, and we've kept a lot of that similar cowboy culture.
True. Something fell out.
That's okay. Continue.
Where were we? Okay. But next, where were we? Lastly, there we go. Tommy Robinson says, quote, speech on, quote unquote, the great replacement and low birth rates shifted the Overton window, sparking millions of views and Elon Musk's attention. From the recent episode of the Tommy Robinson podcast, find it on X.
Yeah, and I absolutely love the girl that he's interviewing here. She's fantastic. And I will say this is an absolute real thing. It's starting to come into the mainstream zeitgeist right now, but this is crucially important for Alberta independents to understand. This is why we need to keep on a tight timeline before immigration picks up to such an extent we don't have a critical mass of individuals in Alberta that will vote for freedom and independence. Right now we have that. I'm not sure the Conservatives have a critical mass of Conservatives that can vote for even Pierre Poilievre in a federal election. Over hundreds of thousands of people are leaving every year. 241,000 individuals left Canada last year. Most of those Conservatives fleeing to the United States and Mexico.
I think when you done it, you really brought it to the masses and shifted. When you talk about the Overton window, you shifted the Overton window with that speech.
It could have gone south, you know. It was at that point. It was really still very risky to do, but it cost a big stir, honestly. But I think at that time, yeah, it got 120 million views or something on X.
Can you tell me any influential people that shared it? Elon Musk shared it.
Yeah.
What was that like?
He shared it with commentary saying that we also have to look at the other side of it, which is the low birth rate, which is something that he talks about all the time, which I agree with. But, you know, that was good. That was good because he was saying, apart from just looking at the great replacement in and of itself, we also have to look at the birth rate.
Because Angela Merkel used the reason why she brought 1 million Syrians in was because we've got a low birth rate and we can't pay the pensions.
Yeah, that's the lie that they
that's what I try and spin to the public.
That they repeat all the time, of course. But he was posting it saying, okay, I'm adding something to this. He wasn't saying, I don't agree with this.
Yes.
And that was massive. You know,
what was that like for you, watching it?
A huge victory, of course. Not a personal victory, but a huge victory for the future of the continent. Because, I mean, if you can't properly diagnose what is going on in your country, if you can't say, like, look, this is actually happening, we are being replaced, then you can't fix it, right? So the fact that now it was being seen and confirmed and acknowledged, that was huge. And I think that it made a big difference. So I'm really glad that I did it.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And Alberta's motto is faith, family, and freedom. And when it comes to birth rates, nobody's kind of figured this puzzle out yet. And I think Alberta can do it if we get our independence and we say no taxes on citizens, only taxes on natural resources, big business and medium-sized businesses, not small businesses. Family-owned businesses should also have no tax. Any other country within the world that has a zero tax system, which is actually quite a few, don't have nearly the natural resources that Alberta has. So we can go to a zero tax system. And if we do, this will afford one parent to stay home.
And that is Eva Vlar. That was Eva Vlar-Dingerbrook, who I really do like. And she's great. Where are you going?
I got to get the dog.
Okay. Let me go this way while you open the door. I think I left the stove on. I think that's what it is. But now I'll go to your comments before... Oh, I didn't leave it on. Good. Before we go to... what are we going to after? Alberta Personalities. There we go. Okay. Is she alive?
Yeah,
what
she
happened?
Was going crazy. I don't know. People must be coming home from
for
work
the
with
game.
Their dogs. I don't know.
It's for the game. I'm guessing there's a lot of people that get together. Mexico's playing Ecuador today.
Well, and because
that's why
we're
I
in
have the Mexican uniform on.
Because we're in a separate room, there's nobody to tell her to stop. So.
Except going outside. Teresa Freedom says, yes, tea and coffee with Paula and Jay. And again, because Teresa Freedom says that Danielle Smith was on the Jason Levine show today, or the tea and coffee with Paula and Jay.
Yeah, and I'm definitely watching it later tonight. So.
And Justin Jabi says, I like Nat's sweater with the soccer ball on it. And it's because it's a Mexican national team
and that's
jersey. It's an old jersey.
That's the old logo.
Yeah. I don't like their new logo. But Mexicans are so insane about football or soccer or whatever you want to call it that we sold out completely all of the Mexico jerseys in the U.S., all over Europe, all over Mexico. So I haven't been able to find anyone. So I'm relegated to wearing this. Teresa Freedom says federalizing the resources in Alberta will just make the rest of Canada hate us because the government will have to pay for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of negatives with the federalization of natural resources. There's ways they're going to try to make this look like a good thing. people, especially within Alberta independents, are very politically savvy, and we're going to see through these political games real quick. It's much like when Danielle Smith tried to pitch the other 9 questions as a good thing. Alberta independents seen through that within a matter of hours. And when Mark Carney tries to pitch this MOU or whatever other natural resources federalization that he tries to pitch, we're going to see through it real quick.
Miss Altoad, hello, says climate crisis. Ugh, yeah. And again, he essentially was one of the architects for that as well, especially during the Trudeau government, but also in the UK before Brexit.
And again, we're going to have some more statements from him tomorrow. He's backing down and setting new goals for the climate. Well, he starts talking about federalization of natural resources. He wants to do both at the same time. He says they don't have to fight each other. We can invest in both simultaneously. This should scare all Canadians, especially in Western Canada. The federalization of natural resources will provide enough money to create a UBI and to usher in communism. Canada is one of the few countries that has enough natural resources to actually pull something like this off. And they have the ideology. I mean, Mark Carney is completely invested in that path already. Mm-hmm. He's trying desperately to move away from Trump, the United States, and capitalism.
Donna Robinson says, climate crisis scam next, lockdown and 15-minute city, net zero liberals following the world domination cult. Mm-hmm. Very well put, Donna Robinson. And A2.0 says, exactly, Alberta needs to have a trade agreement with the USA. The federal government has failed Alberta. And
well, absolutely. And people in Alberta independence should really start trying to reach out to American politicians, not necessarily the big name politicians, but just American Republican politicians, asking what do they think about a trade deal with Alberta if Alberta was to ever get its independence and things like that. If they're warm to the idea, and the Canadian public and the Albertan public start to realize America wants a tariff-free trade deal with Alberta, but Canada, on the other hand, has been sabotaging this thing from the beginning, it will send a ton of moderates to vote for independence.
And A2.0 also says, buy local, but boycott Ontario. And I do agree with supporting a local economy, but especially if that local economy is allowed to fully thrive by itself. And right now it can't in Canada.
Yeah, it's not a free market here. Canada has created massive monopolies with legislation, regulation, and a lot of other ways. And in order to buy local, you're having to buy the highest price product. It should not be that way. It should not be half the price on a product that comes halfway around the world. The local product should be the cheapest option. The reason it's not is because of the amount of regulations the federal government has put on it.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, Bill Hillier. Hello, thank you for being here. It says, just joining from Alberta. Thank you for joining.
Good to see you.
And where were we? Okay, let's go to Alberta Personalities. Oh no, there's no numbers this time. Hold on. Breaking news.
4.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alberta Personalities.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start.
And I'm glad it was 4 because I was kind of guessing there.
Let's start with, and we kind of showed this, but didn't give the full context in the story, so I'm glad we have it this time. Ryan Gertison says, quote, this Hamilton mayoral candidate, Scarlett, who is a trans woman, meaning a man who thinks he's a woman, with disabilities, takes questions from a puppet and answers questions with a puppet, is running against Andrea Horwath. Canada is in collapse. Canada has collapsed.
And people may remember I brought up a short clip yesterday. This is a different clip, but with the same sock puppets, and she's actually being interviewed with somebody else with the sock puppet. This is the state of Canadian politics right now. This is absolutely ridiculous. For Canadians to accept this, for anybody to even be able to run on a platform of a frickin' sock puppet is ridiculous. Get these lunatics out of politics. The only way to do it is for Alberta to gain its independence and have the adults in the room. I mean, I know the Democrats like to talk about that, but the Democrats haven't been the adults for a long time.
And I mean, sock puppet does it, because it could get any more ironic than that and more obvious and evident than that.
I have Scarlett Gillespie here. Who's that? Why, she's running for mayor of Hamilton.
Surprise.
Woo!
Hello, everybody. How are you all doing?
Now, you were already asked jokingly why you are running for Hamilton. You were already asked jokingly why you're running for mayor of Hamilton. Would you like to give a more, I just remembered about the puppets. Would you like to give a more nuanced answer about why you're running for mayor of Hamilton?
Absolutely. All right. I'm a City Housing Hamilton resident, a working class trans woman living with disabilities, and I've seen how the city neglects the building I live in. My building, the Cumberland City Housing Hamilton building, was going to be another Jamesville, and for those who don't know what that means, it was going to be left to rot.
Have scarlet leprosy.
Oh God! Like, this is literally turning into a clown show, and it's continuing because we're seeing what is happening in U.S. politics. Traditional liberals are now trying to push out the communists and socialists unsuccessfully, and it seems like the communist and socialist candidates are the ones that are winning. We see something similar happening in Canada. Mark Carney is trying to go back to natural resources, but the vote share of the Liberal Party is going down because they're clearing out into the NDP, who are going again into hardcore communism and socialism, which makes it very hard for Mark Carney to go towards the right in any way, shape, or form, because voters will leave. Now, I believe those voters will come back at election time every time because they don't want to leave a path for actual conservatism in Canada.
Just run away from this insanity. You have the opportunity to run away from this. You have the opportunity to vote yourself away from this insanity that will probably continue to go on because they're useful idiots, that they're useful to the cause to eventually get those that really want to grasp that power, further power, and just handing it over to them. But they're useful tools for now, and literal tools.
Well, the writing's on the wall. They have freaking politicians with sock puppets. You have Trump pulling out of the USMCA. Carney's talking about the federalization of natural resources. Private property rights are disappearing. Mass immigration is on the rise. All the mechanisms have been built for at the end of 2027, going into 2028. Millions of people are going to be flooded into Canada. If your eyes aren't open yet in Alberta, I don't know what more it's going to take. There is a critical mass of individuals in Alberta, I'm hoping, that will fight, rise, and gain their independence come October 19th.
Especially because Canada does want to continue to turn towards not just China, but also Europe, and thinking the European ideas are great, the climate scam ideas are great. And we have seen recently in the past few days, yes, there's a heat wave hitting Europe, and for some reason in the UK, because they want to torture their own people, and in other cities like Paris and elsewhere in Europe, they're trying to tell people not to use their air conditioning. And Europeans have gotten so used to this and the propaganda against the United States that now with this World Cup and a lot of them coming to support their teams to the US are starting to find and see, and we continue to see these great videos coming out of the US of Europeans seeing that it doesn't have to be terrible, their lives don't have to be miserable, and that they've been propagandized against the US for too long now, I would say, and I'm glad that everybody's kind of waking up.
Yeah, and there is a lot of videos like this coming out. That being said, I've lived in Canada, the United States, as well as Mexico now, and I've lived there for quite a bit of time in each country. Now, I will say, America is like Texas. Everything is bigger in America. That being said, sometimes it's almost too big. It's too much. Usually when I used to live in the States, I mean, you're cutting meals in half. You're definitely taking it home. This idea of a doggy bag is always going to happen in the United States because there's always going to be leftover food. Canada is completely the opposite. I'm shocked in Canada at the small portion sizes and how little I'm getting for my money. Now, Mexico, I think, is really the best of both worlds. Sometimes if you go to a more high-end restaurant, you're going to get smaller portions, but you get a good value for your dollar here in Mexico as well, but they don't overfeed you because they are concerned with weight regulations and things like that.
But I would also say, I mean, in the U.S., yes, you can. I mean, you pay for one and you eat for two.
Yeah, basically is how it works.
Especially if you're European and you're used to not eating almost anything. Johnny Midnight says, quote, the look on their face compared to what they're used to. And this is a German eating at an American restaurant.
Here's your food. Is something wrong?
This could feed a whole family.
Thank you.
This is why I like America, man. This is why I love America. This is why I love America. Why is the slice so big?
Okay, well, we clearly didn't know the sizes of pizza because we ordered 7 of them.
This is one scoop, just.
It's like 5 scoops, I think.
This is a small portion. Look at this. In Europe, it would be extra large.
I mean, can you beat American food? Look at that. It's delicious.
You see how big this is? It is ginormous. I mean, fair play. Like, that is an insane looking margarita.
I haven't got some fun yet.
Thank you.
For sauce?
Delicious, actually.
And I will say there's a portion size issue in the U.S. as well with the food waste that could be good.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not going to go hard at them because at least they're not starving their citizens when it comes to food and when it comes to air conditioning and other different climate policies or any kind of policies. They try to put their citizens first, or at least a lot of the times it comes out that way. Canada is completely the opposite. They always put their citizens last. So does Europe. Europe is absolutely dying because of this heat wave, because of these air conditioners. The portion sizes and their value for money that you're getting for a house is absolutely ridiculous in Canada. I mean, a one-bedroom apartment in downtown Vancouver was costing around $1 million before we left there. I moved to Mexico. The construction of homes and apartments here are on a completely another level. You're getting value for your money because everything is made out of concrete, and it's probably 1/10 the price of an apartment within Canada.
I was going to say something, but I forgot. Lastly, Antonio Tweed says, quote, he's right. And he asks, why Canadians, why so stupid? And that's it.
I wondered why Canadians as a whole, the population, are so low IQ. I've talked about this quite a few times, but I find it just fascinating how stupid the mass swath of the Canadian population is. You look down in the States, down in the United States, and again, I played 4 years of professional hockey. I lived in multiple places throughout the States. The U.S. was friendlier, it was safer, they were kinder, and my quality of life from 2022 up until 2024, dramatically better than my quality of life in Canada. And it's interesting because Canadians have always made fun of Americans. Oh, they're dumb. They don't know what they're talking about. They're so stupid. Well, if you look at what has happened in Canada, and let's back this up for a second. I want to go to 2018, 2019. Canadians, we want...
And I completely agree. Canadians are dumb, and it's no longer time to go easy on them. Albertans, it's time to wake up and vote your way out of this mess. Alberta independence on October 19th is that opportunity to get away from the land of the freaking retards here.
We want a bigger minimum wage. Minimum wage people need to get paid more. Well, the problem with the minimum wage going up is that the corporations could definitely afford it, but the bottom level companies can't. That's how you bankrupt small and medium-sized businesses. But so in Ontario, our biggest province here in Canada, they jacked the minimum wage up from $15 an hour to $18 an hour back in 2019. And Tim Hortons immediately started laying off full-time employees and cutting benefits, saying we can't afford this. And you think about it in the grand scheme of things, you basically had a 20% increase in your labor. And if I don't know what the exact numbers are, but let's say they're spending, I don't know, $200 million a year on labor. Now you're spending, do some math in my head, $250 million in labor. Doesn't look good for the shareholders or for the profits. So they started cutting the benefits. They started cutting staff. Everybody's going part-time, so you're not going to get the full-time benefits. And then enter in the scamdemic of 2020.
And this is kind of what I was saying with medium and large businesses having different tax rates in a free and independent Alberta. Small businesses, meaning 3 employees or less, that are usually family-owned businesses, people that are just getting into business, need to have a zero tax rate, just like zero tax rate on all citizens there. Are you okay?
Yeah, I was just trying to not get it to play again.
Oh, okay. You can switch the camera there.
I know. I was trying to find the button. I was going to say, and Canadians have been propagandized enough and kept comfortable enough where they won't really want to notice or see or go outside, because they're also told that the world outside of Canada is horrible and terrible, and in the US they don't have free healthcare, and Canada is so much greater because they have free healthcare, without really highlighting that no, it's not free. You pay for it in taxes, and you pay a lot for terrible, horrible service in terms of healthcare. And there's many little things like that, but because Canada's number one identity at the moment is to hate the US. That is the Canadian identity. It's just people, multicultural people, and with no opposed national state that just hates the US. And that is what Canada has essentially built itself to be built itself up to be in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
But if they can keep the population comfortable enough where they don't fully want to notice or can't even travel outside of Canada to see how the rest of the world actually lives, well, then they'll continue to listen to those in power. But now let's go to your comments and then into Alberta's Canada, speaking of. Silverfeet says, hey, at least it's not a full-service puppet. I'm sure he uses one. Silverfeet also says they're blaming the heat wave on Americans using ACs. Of course, because they have to, again, similar as in Europe, similar to Canada, they have to scapegoat the US because people shouldn't be able to notice how much better a system like the US is. A system where, at least recently, again, has been based upon meritocracy and has been based upon the free market, the actual free market economy.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been seeing some really weird propaganda on the news and social media lately, such as in the European Union, they're saying the red, yellow, and green lights are melting, and they're showing them melting because of the heat. This is absolutely ridiculous. You're not going to have street lights melting, and they're saying that these wind farms are actually bending at the center because it's too hot. I think this is cheap metal coming from China is what a lot of this is coming down to.
But again, they're also saying that because in the US they're using air conditioning, they can't use air conditioning in Europe because they have to keep their carbon footprint low, even though their elderly and pregnant ladies and babies are dying because of how hot it is, especially because their structures and their buildings are built to retain heat because usually it's cold there. And they continue to say, oh, there's never been a heat wave like this in the past. There's been heat waves like these every 20 years. And up until I think they started recording temperature, which is around the 1700s.
Oh, you also have to remember the way they're...
So this has happened continuously.
The way they're measuring temperature, they're intentionally trying to get the numbers to increase, meaning they're moving the temperature stations to airports and into inner cities where it's much hotter. And Canada specifically, a lot of the temperature gauges used to be in the northern parts of Canada, and now they're moving it down towards the border, almost all of them, and they're shutting off those northern temperature gauges, so they're only reading the hottest temperature gauges. Therefore, the average is going to be much hotter overall.
And Philip Vespa says, in America, you can get 3 pound popcorn bags, which cost less per pound than 1 kilo bags in Canada. It's far cheaper, even with the currency conversion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm convinced after moving to Mexico and seeing other places in the world, the American price of food is about the price food should be overall for the cost of the inputs and things like that. I mean, in Mexico, it's a little bit cheaper for food, but not much cheaper.
And it also depends where you go.
Yeah, but when you look at Canada, my God, Canada is on a whole nother level. I mean, it's not even a comparison. Canada is here for the price of food. Every other country is here or at a bottom level.
But because they want you to not go to the U.S., not check for yourself, and continue to believe what they tell you, they say, oh, the U.S. is terrible, don't go there. It's so dangerous, and now especially with Orange Men Bad, so you can't go across the border to compare the prices and actually see the reality of life.
But you can.
But people don't.
Yeah, no, but they are.
And now they are.
Yeah.
Now they have to. Yes.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it the other day, and the day trips across the border are spiking right now in Canada. Why is that? The Canadian mainstream media won't tell you, but people go for day trips down to the United States for two things. That is gas and groceries. That's obvious. That is what is going on right now in Canada. They're too squeezed for every single dollar, and they're trying to get them to buy Canadian, but buying Canadian means buying the highest priced product on the shelf.
Mm-hmm. But now let's go to, speaking of all of this, let's go to Alberta's Canada. And Alberta is the one shining hope to leave Canada that exists.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
Let's start with this from...
And I will say the next section is going to be Alberta and the World. It's going to be all U.S. news regarding the Supreme Court decisions that came out today. They're absolutely massive, and people might not understand. There are a lot of good repercussions, even from the bad decisions. We'll go through that after this section, though.
Tony Tweed says, so affordable housing means the government, you will buy the homes and rent them out to Canadians. They weren't kidding when they said, quote, you will own nothing and be happy. Elbows up.
And this is exactly it. He is pitching that slogan from the WEF. You will own nothing and you will be happy. He is creating a renters-only society in Canada by trying to kill the middle class, buying up the housing rather than letting the condo developers fail and build a new middle class with the cheap housing that will be left over.
These are two-bedroom homes up here. They're about $1.2 million still. Rents have gone down 6%, but it's completely still out of whack. Do you want to see home prices fall even further, especially in the Metro Vancouver region?
What we want is to establish, and I'll speak from a federal perspective, Metro Vancouver, Lower Mainland, across British Columbia, across Canada, is to build more and make available more affordable housing that works relative to what people's incomes are. And that means supply. It means more supply, obviously. It means part of that supply coming in innovative ways. I'm turning towards Minister Robertson because we're just in the early days. Literally, the legislation has gone through the Senate moments ago of establishing Build Canada Homes, which is a factory-built, it's a way to build much more effectively, more Canadian, lower emissions, lower costs, and build out and providing
Okay, and
that
you can
strata.
leave it there. And we need to be very cautious on this. He will pitch this as affordable homes, get people into these affordable homes, build more, buy more for the federal government. So the federal government is owning everything. Once they have everybody in these homes and they own all the property and all the housing is kind of built, they're going to jack it up over time. And this is literally the ushering in of communism through the ownership of property by the federal government there.
Let's also see what else they're doing, because Wealth Move says, quote, Ottawa just handed $500 million to a steel company to reduce emissions so it can sell more steel to Europe. One question, is that steel crossing the Atlantic on electric cargo ships, or does the carbon math stop at the port?
Well, and again, it's private investment we need coming into Canada for these steel companies, for these auto companies, and for every single other company. When it's the federal government as the only investor, again, that is called communism. This is another pillar that they're trying to usher in communism through socialism on, is funding all this private industry through the federal government. And then we just covered what they're doing with housing and rents.
Control the means of production, essentially.
Can we just get a summary of what this announcement was in English?
Yes, of course. So this is great news because Minerais Vert Québec is investing $500 million in their iron ore mine. It is an important investment at a time where we know we're dealing with a trade war that is affecting particularly the steel industry, and of course iron ore is at the core of the development of the steel industry. It is also an investment that is key for Quebec and Canada, because not only is iron ore, when it is extremely pure, a critical mineral, but also it is part of developing a steel sector that will become even more green.
And she's a freaking retard here. In the United States, it's private money flowing into the industry. What Donald Trump and the government sees their role in as is to reduce regulation, to keep that money flowing into the private industry. So you keep having investment. With a $500 million investment, how long until they need another bailout? How long until they actually go under here?
We know that right now, Europe is asking for much more steel sector that is with a lower carbon emission footprint. And that is why what Minerais Vert Québec is doing is going to contribute to diversifying Canada's trade, because it is going to be exporting towards Europe and also to the Middle East and elsewhere in the world. So therefore reducing our exposure to the American market.
That's good. That's like the blonde Kamala Harris at this point. I mean, public sector money, government money is only going to go so far, and it's eventually going to run out. The business is going to go belly up, and they're going to move to the United States, where it's deregulated and there's a ton of private investment to come in. There's a ton of money right now piling up within Texas and a few other states to come into Alberta for private investment of natural resource sectors and manufacturing sectors if Alberta can gain its independence.
And also her saying, oh, it's going to also help the U.S. The lower carbon emissions. Yes, and to move away, and that important part she said at the end, so we can move away from the U.S. market, essentially hindering every single other part and every single other point of production, and also the carbon footprint you're actually going to be exposed to in the end, and by selling to way higher carbon footprint countries that you say you care so much about, just everything so you cannot have to deal with the U.S.
Well, they don't want to compete. They can't compete with the U.S. market. That's why they're saying they need to move away from the U.S. market, because there's no investors right now. They're going to come into the Canadian market. They have made that clear. They're all going to the U.S. from Europe, from Canada, even from Mexico. They're all going into the United States because of the deregulation in the environment Trump has made right now. What the Canadian government is creating is for a federalization of natural resources through their own investment, because they can't get private investment. Oh, sorry about that. You can go on.
Next, Antonio tweet says, quote, the sad truth about the Canadian carbon tax, a crippled economy in exchange for saving the planet. A whopping 37 hours worth of carbon emissions from China. Was it worth it? No.
Yeah, and all this is starting to come out. Carney doesn't have an answer for this, so his new answer is federalization of natural resources. Well, we continue to stay on the low carbon footprint for Canadians and Canada.
Pay the fucking tax. Canadians need to understand this, and they are not dealt correct facts from CBC.
And just to put real numbers in perspective, right? Canada, we spent 5 whole years paying a carbon tax and crippling our national economy, by the way. We saved 37 hours of China emission. It takes China 37 hours to emit 11.9 gigatons of CO2, all right? Which is the amount that we've saved with the 5 years of the carbon tax.
pay the fucking...
Also because Canada is a carbon sink, which means it sucks more carbon out of the air than it puts out. Because of the forests.
Absolutely. And the way it does that is because of the amount of landmass it has and the amount of trees on that landmass. And they don't calculate that in because if they did, there would be no reason for Canada to try to stop emissions because they literally have carbon sucking devices called trees all over Canada.
You know, they already exist. It's the wonder of nature. But lastly, the never-ending debate between...
We should make a video on that because that was one of the most interesting statistics I always like to bring up.
And this is another thing I also want to do a video about, the never-ending debate on healthcare and how much better Canada is because it has free healthcare. Well, no, it doesn't. JGenXer says USA healthcare versus Canada. Free healthcare. Again, it's not free. You pay for it in taxes. Just look at your last notice of assessment and figure out how much you paid for it.
Having a universal healthcare system is one of the things that separates us from the Americans.
There's one way to settle this debate: receipts. Let's check it out. In Canada, healthcare is free. In America, you gotta pay for it. So let's put apples to apples before we really get into it. I asked ChatGPT, if I make $70,000 a year in Ontario, what's my tax rate after all taxes? And there's a lot. One would pay 40% tax rate, you would pay $28,000 a year in taxes. Same question, same $70,000 in Florida. You'd pay a 16% tax rate, $11,200. But in America, you gotta pay for your healthcare. How much is a healthcare plan for a family of 4 in Florida? $14,400 a year. So total with taxes and your family's paid healthcare plan, you're paying $25,600. Meaning the average American is ahead $2,400 a year after taxes and after their healthcare. But not everything is about money. It's about quality of healthcare, right? Well, let's get right into it. The average wait time to see a specialist in Florida is 30 days. What's the average wait time to see a specialist in Ontario? Drum roll, please. 7 months. And we've all heard of cases of over a year.
I'd say the wait time in Mexico to see a specialist is literally days.
0.
Days.
As soon as you can call them and get an appointment.
You could literally go get your referral the first day, and later that day you would be in with a specialist getting an MRI or something like that. It's absolutely crazy the level of healthcare within Mexico.
Again,
I was shocked.
Paid in this case, but even
paid,
for
but
unpaid,
they have an unpaid system here as well. They have a complimentary system, which is absolutely fantastic.
And even though, I mean, some of it sucks, and yes, there's rats in some of the hospitals in teeny tiny towns out in the nowhere Mexico, most of it is pretty similar in parity because a lot of the doctors do lend their services also to the public sector.
They're all trained
the private doctors.
They're all trained in the United States, and the hospitals here, when I went into the hospitals here, I was shocked. They're far nicer than the hospitals in Canada. There's one other thing I wanted to say, and I think I put it on my X account today, and that is healthcare is spelled MAID in Canada, and the federal government is leaning hard into that because it saves them costs every year. And they're trying to manipulate those statistics next year, but they don't want to register made Indians as made anymore. They want to register them as other means.
And lastly, hold on. For some reason, I can't bring up your comment. I'm guessing because YouTube got mad at it. But
okay, go ahead.
There's just one comment. Roland Halleck says, at least in Canada, we don't lose our house for hospital bills. I mean, those stories, as impactful as they are in the U.S., are, I would say, more and more few and far between. And I think they get a lot of media exposure because they're, yes, so outrageous and so ridiculous. But at the same time, in Canada, you can't even get to the hospital. You can even get to the hospital, or it takes you 17 hours to just be seen on triage at the emergency room.
Well, and I would also say Canada does have a backup system, I guess, and that backup system is called Mexico. The amount of people that come from Canada to Mexico for their dental and their medical is absolutely unbelievable. People don't wait. And this is why the Canadian government wants to keep a monopoly within their healthcare system, because they know Canadians will just come down to Mexico if they actually need treatment, because Mexico has the doctors. They have the state-of-the-art medical health care as well. A lot of things that aren't offered, like stem cells and other things, are offered in Mexico.
Silverfeet says, when I was in Mount St. Joseph Hospital in 2025 in Vancouver, there were rats I saw every night. There's a lot of rats in Vancouver as well, believe me, and they're big and scary. So yes, I fully do believe you. And again, these are scandals that came out about the public service in Mexico. And yes, there's a lot of failures still here in Mexico, but at least, again, it's complementary.
And we'll go into the rest of the comments after Alberta in the World, because we're running out of time. We do have a conference call in a little bit.
Sorry.
And Alberta in the World is probably the most important section today. It had a ton of news coming out of the U.S. with the Supreme Court.
Okay. Silverfeet, I'll read that last. Okay. So if he says, I told the nurse, and she said, yes, we have a rat problem. Vancouver has a rat problem. Canada has a rat problem, both human and actual animals. Okay, let's go to Alberta and the world. That one always looks a bit jiggery, but okay, let's go. Let's start with Patriot Watch says, quote, the U.S. Supreme Court has blocked President Trump's executive order barring birthright citizenship for anchor babies and children of illegal migrants.
Stop for a second. I'm going to get you to read the rest of this, but this is actually better news than when it first came in. When it first came in this morning, I was a little bit upset, but the more I researched it, I said, there is a big ray of shining light here, and I'll talk about it in just a moment. Why don't we go into the clip and read the rest of it first, though, here.
So I read it or go?
Yeah.
Okay. Democrats will now ramp up their facilitation of the invasion of the U.S. An absolute travesty. Roberts and Barrett joined the Liberals, of course. Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas dissented.
And we can play the clip here.
And it's a big one. It has to do with birthright citizenship. It was an executive order that President Trump, on day one of his second term in January 2025, signed the executive order. It was immediately challenged, and now we can tell you that the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled against President Trump's order to limit birthright citizenship. Shannon, we have talked for some time about the president feeling that he would not win on this one. The question is, why not?
Okay, right off the bat, it says children born in the United States to parents unlawfully or temporarily present are, quote, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and are citizens at birth under the 14th Amendment.
And you can leave it there. And this was a lot of people are upset, especially on the right within the United States. And I think Donald Trump is going to harness that anger. There were a couple holdouts when he tried to pass the SAVE Act, which is mail-in balloting and a lot of other things to kind of clean up the elections, as well as a voter ID. A lot of states have no voter ID. The SAVE Act would actually solve that. I think he's going to harness the anger of what happened here in the Supreme Court with birthright citizenship in order to really press the SAVE Act through. And the SAVE Act is going to come in big when it comes to the 2028 election, if he can get that thing passed. So as much as I don't like this decision, I think it does have a bright spot, being he will be able to pass the SAVE Act on the back of this, most likely.
Hopefully. But also, while in Canada, we have men that think they're women talking to sock puppets, wanting to run for mayor in the U.S. and men and women's sports still in Canada. In the U.S., at least, now that might be changing. Nick Sorter says, quote, the Supreme Court also has upheld state laws banning men from women's sports. Great news for female athletes across the country and for common sense and biology. Every state should join West Virginia and Idaho in passing these laws.
Yeah, and I grabbed this at the very beginning of the morning, so they didn't know how many judges actually voted in favor or against it. It was a 9-0 ruling. It's very rare you get a 9-0 ruling with the Supreme Court. You have 3 judges that are extreme left ideologically. What this is signaling is the left understands in order to win elections, they have to back off of this issue, because moderate voters and mothers do not like this particular issue. This 9-0 ruling will have ramifications, I believe, in a lot of elections as well. You're not going to see politicians pressing for these policies as much in the United States anymore, I believe.
I guess one of them finally learned what a woman is.
So now the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled in favor of Idaho and West Virginia laws. These are state laws now that ban transgender athletes from participating on female sports teams. So the challenges against those laws have now prevailed. Don't know what the breakdown was. Some thought it might be 9-0. Others were suggesting 7-2. We'll await that and bring in our legal panel, Jonathan Turley, Brett Tolman, former federal prosecutor, and Carrie Severino, former law clerk for Justice Thomas and president of JCN.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And it doesn't mean they don't believe in this. It just means tactically, in order to win elections, they know they can't push this issue right now. It's way, way too progressive, and it always has been way too progressive. And they're feeling it at the ballot box, especially with the midterms coming up. I fully expect them to make a hard turn away from this issue, especially in the midterms.
But again, as you said, the Democrats are also kind of dividing towards between the which are just socialists and communists versus the
yeah, but you have a couple judges on that court that are more moderate liberals, but even the extremely far left judges voted against this, which is very, very rare.
And lastly, Michael Carbonara says, wow, Florida legislature has approved the official abolition of statewide property taxes. This is a massive win. Proud to be Floridian. However, I will read the context added by readers saying Florida lawmakers approved placing a constitutional amendment on the November 2026 ballot. If 60% of voters approve, it would increase the homestead exemption for non-school property taxes to $250,000 and provide a framework for elimination. It does not abolish all property taxes yet.
Yeah, but this was the first step they had to get past, and it looks like it has passed. This is absolutely fantastic. Florida, I believe, is the first state really trying to get rid of property taxes. Trump has talked about this. If the tariff work out, he wants to get rid of all taxes on citizens as well as property taxes. I don't know if he'll be able to do both, but he would definitely be able to get rid of property taxes. After you spend your lifetime buying a home, you shouldn't have to continue to pay rent to the government on that property. This has to be one of the first taxes that go in a free and independent Alberta. There should be no taxes on citizens either. If the United States can do it, and other countries around the world can do it, Alberta can easily do it with the amount of natural resources that they have.
And it should not be controversial, but is there a clip or no?
President, I wave close.
The Secretary would like the board. The Secretary would like the board and the senators proceed to vote. Have all senators voted?
Okay,
and
you can leave it there, but we've been talking about that for a long time. Ron DeSantis has really been trying to push that thing through. If he can push that thing through, it can change the zeitgeist of people. People just accept that they have to pay property taxes, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It wasn't like that at the founding of these nations.
And today we're not heading over to RUMBLE because, again, we have a hard out at 6:30, which is in 4 minutes, to join a conference call thing. And we have no more comments, but thank you so much, everybody, for your lovely comments and for joining the conversation, as I always say. And we will see you. Oh, will we see them tomorrow?
Oh, no, I have a specialty appointment tomorrow. So if we're able to get on, we will come on later at night. It just depends
way later
how long this kind of goes on. In Mexico, when you go for an appointment, you can wait up to 5 hours. So
yeah, but I was going to say something.
So maybe we'll come on at 7 or 8 tomorrow.
Or later, yeah, probably.
It's not, there is no guarantee we'll be on tomorrow.
I remember what I was going to say. I will try to put something on X to let people know, and also on our community posts here on the channel on YouTube. You can always find any updates if we are coming on late or can't make it, etc. And also, again, working on the first edited video of many, I hope so, as well. Todd says, love you guys, thanks, love you back, and thank you for being here. And Silverfeet says bye.
And thanks for everybody that did sit through today's episode. I'm still working out a lot of the rough spots with the set. So if there's any audio or visual issues, I can't see it until after we get off and I can watch the episode again.
Yes, but thank you so much for joining us again. If you still haven't done so, please do hit that subscribe button. It is what helps us out the most. Thank you to everybody that sent super chats as well. Ann Yasinski and Steven Jensen and everybody else that sent super chats. Thank you so much. Oh, here we go. Steven Jensen, Ann Yasinski. Thank you so much for the super chats. We will see you maybe tomorrow. We will let you know. Have a great night.
Adios.